he thinks it's probably from the offspring of a human and an extraterrestrial. He's named it the Star Child.
That really was not the best choice of names for it. Try to talk to a scientist and you'd say, I want to talk to you about an unusual skull I have. They would want to know if it has a name or is it called anything, and I would have to say the Star Child, and right away, click.
The only way Lloyd can find out for sure if the Star Child is human or alien is to test its DNA. He's staking his reputation on it, and he's ready to find out the truth, for better or for worse. It's difficult for many mere mortals to get their head around the concept of aliens creating us and facilitating our major ancient accomplishments.
This is our planet Astron Delta.
But perhaps hard science can build up the theory, or else tear it down.
We are down deep in the ground looking at these ancient levels, and if there was physical evidence of extraterrestrials, we'd be the ones to find them.
The evidence that extraterrestrials colonized us, interbred with us, and shared all their knowledge can seem overwhelming.
The high density of our planet made it possible for us to advance gravity and therefore anti-gravity theories. It's beyond me.
At many sites around the world, we can only marvel at how ancient people could have cut and moved stones weighing up to 100 tons each. Some archaeologists are amazed by ancient relics that have come to light over the last few decades. And one of the most baffling could potentially change the way we write history. It's often thought that Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, but perhaps it was actually the aliens. Deep inside an ancient Egyptian temple, a strange wall carving lures many visitors with its mysterious symbolism. Most Egyptologists believe it shows the birth of a god, but others say this hieroglyph depicts an ancient electric light bulb, complete with filament and electrical cord.
It is absolutely spectacular to see that, electricity was not invented by our civilization. It's been around for centuries. It's just been forgotten, lost knowledge.
It's hard to imagine, but some believers bring up another point. How did the ancient Egyptians carve all these hieroglyphs and pictures inside a pitch-dark pyramid? They rule out oil lamps and torches because little telltale soot has been found inside the pyramids. So could they perhaps have used batteries? Not far from Egypt, in the 1930s, archaeologists found a remarkable device that proved the people who lived here 2,000 years ago actually did make an electric battery. Today, it's called the Baghdad battery.
A lot of these things like electricity, those things were only privy to a select few.
How could people from the time of Jesus have known how to make a battery?
I believe that a lot of these ancient technologies that we've been rediscovering do indeed come from extraterrestrials. I think what's happened is that the technology was possibly left here for us to use for a while, and then maybe after a while it started breaking down, and just like our car, we don't know how to fix it, and so it gets destroyed.
While ancient astronaut believers see the Baghdad battery as evidence of alien intervention, far away in Texas, ancient technology professor Nancy Reed sees something else.
The technology needed to make the Baghdad battery is basically very simple. The hollow rod is copper, and the solid one is iron, and then of course we would have filled the container with vinegar.
When they're put together, the acidic vinegar sparks an electrical reaction.
And by touching the ends of, say, a voltmeter to this, we can create about a half a volt.
Half a volt isn't much electricity, and it's still a mystery why electrical batteries were made 2,000 years ago. But were aliens responsible for the technology, or was it something even more baffling? And could the Baghdad battery, or something like it, have powered the Egyptian light bulb? We might be able to find the answer to this question in Switzerland. Author Erich Von Daniken recently built a theme park revolving around the ancient astronauts theory. And it features an incredible exhibit based on the ancient Egyptian light bulb. Publicist Caroline Schneider finds the light bulb a remarkable idea.
This is what it looks like. So they must have had a way to have light within those pyramids. This is a possibility. If it's true, I do not know. But just thinking of it, it's quite amazing if they really had it.
At Von Daniken's theme park, the light bulb is fueled by replicas of the Baghdad battery. But was the original image actually a light bulb, or is it just an idea born from someone's wild imagination?
When I read Von Daniken's books now, I do the same thing I tell my students to. Cover up the caption, and I will guarantee you that if you do that, you don't see a light bulb. You see what looks to be an eggplant. You take your hand off, you go, it's a light bulb? Huh? What's he talking about? Tell you what, find the glass, find where it's the metal, where you screw it into the socket, and find the source of energy for that light bulb. That's physical evidence.
It seems that all that glistens is not gold. But is there gold in the ruins of Teotihuacan? And more importantly, is there any proof that aliens built this place to process gold? Archaeologist Kim Goldsmith has spent the past 24 years studying the ruins of Teotihuacan.
There was no gold here. There is no gold anywhere in this area to start off with. There were no gold mines, and they were not bringing gold from anywhere during Teotihuacan times.
So what about the theory that Teotihuacan was an alien landing pad?
Think about this. These guys, these extraterrestrials, are able to traverse interstellar space, and they need to eyeball where to land? Don't they have GPS or something?
Still, perhaps these pyramids could have had some kind of astral significance. Ted Strain thinks that they were aligned to be an exact match for our solar system. But archaeologist Ken Fader says when it comes to the pyramids, pattern is in the eye of the beholder.
But if you stop at 9, you get 9, you go, wow, there are 9 pyramids, just like the 9 planets. Well, that's because you stopped counting, because there's actually a 10th and an 11th and a 12th. But I don't know, maybe the ancient astronauts will think that that means that there used to be more planets in the solar system, because we end up with this perfectly circular argument.
Teotihuacan was probably a thriving city, no different from any other.
And the people who lived here were architects and engineers. There were people involved in the administrative and judicial system of the site, and there were also people involved in the army that defended the city.
So let's return to everyone's favorite ancient astronaut mystery, the Great Pyramids of Egypt. People have speculated that the pyramids were built by everyone from Atlanteans to aliens, anyone but the Egyptians. But archaeologist Ken Fader says that the proof is written right there on the walls.
Well, that's sort of like saying we don't know how they built the Empire State Building. We have photographs of them building the Empire State Building, and while we don't have photographs of building the pyramids, we have artwork produced by the Egyptians showing how they moved huge rocks. We have direct physical evidence on the rocks themselves of how they carved them.
We may never find proof of extraterrestrial stonemasons. But today we have the chance to prove that hundreds of years ago, humans mated with aliens.
Being here on the border, and working in the county hospital, I have seen every genetic disorder that's come through. So I've seen a lot of stuff, and this doesn't fit into any of that.
We know that the skull is about 900 years old, and that its eye sockets look out of this world. But the test that will best reveal whether or not the star child is part alien is a DNA test. Lloyd has put the skull through a battery of DNA tests, and what he's found only deepens the mystery of the star child. Jason Eshelman of Trace Genetics in San Francisco has lots of experience working with ancient DNA. he worked on Kennewick Man, the 9,000-year-old human remains found in Washington state in 1996. Now, years later, Jason's got another big challenge: the Star Child.
What drew me to it is that Lloyd was generally interested in addressing some of these questions with scientific tools where we could attempt to address some of these questions.
The process of extracting ancient DNA isn't very different to the process for modern DNA. It's just much harder to find ancient DNA that's still intact.
Any biological material that's 900 years old, you'd expect the DNA to have gone through some degradation.
There's no guarantee that Jason will be able to see the Star Child's DNA, especially if it's alien, and if aliens even have DNA. He's got his work cut out for him, and the results will be revealed later. But for now, we return to the puzzle of the Nazca lines in Peru. Some people believe there's no way humans alone could have made huge geoglyphs like these thousands of years ago without the ability to see their work from some kind of air or spacecraft. But one expert says there were no aliens required. Joe Nickel is a skeptic with the Committee for Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal.
That's the upper margin.
He says it couldn't have been aliens who made the Nazca lines for some very simple reasons.
The ancient astronauts, of course, would have hovered overhead with a flying saucer. This would have created a great problem with dust. The Nazca helpers would, of course, have put dust masks on and squinted and bent down low. And then they would have used sticks and cord, like we're doing, to finish the figure.
First, he gets his materials ready.
This is un-Nazca-like, but is simply what we have to use since we don't have a gravel-littered desert.
Then he measures out the diagram of the figure. In this case, he'll attempt to recreate one of the most beautiful Nazca geoglyphs, the 150-foot spider.
They should be about 20 feet. See if this is about 20 feet from here to there. Huh? About 7. Let's just measure here again. This time spent on this particular configuration pays dividends. That's why I'm taking plenty of time with it.
But Joe seems to be having some trouble.
Okay. Then,
perhaps some extraterrestrial help would be useful after all. Joe Nickel's got a lot to prove in his quest to explain the Nazca lines. For decades, their mystery has been a cornerstone of the ancient astronauts' theory.
So we just want to come in an arc.
But today, Joe thinks he can demystify the Nazca lines for good.
People are often impressed with things like giant ground drawings or crop circles because they imagine that it's far more difficult than it is. But in fact, it's not hard to make a smooth circle. And what you can do on a small sheet of paper with a compass and a straight edge, you can make it huge.
All it takes is plotting out the points on a grid and measuring the points on a field with ordinary stakes and rope. So it's not all that difficult to do. But Joe's had practice making the Nazca lines. He recreated one of the largest lines, a 460-foot condor, in 1982. Because if we examine some of the original lines, they don't look so well formed. It appears that some of the Nazca's early calculations weren't on target. But as time went on, they learned from their mistakes and perfected their techniques. But if the Nazca did make these lines themselves, why? Some believers think that after the aliens left, the Nazca longed for their return, and so they drew the lines to lure the aliens back.
Well, it's an interesting story. You know, some people believe that, and some people believe in the Easter Bunny. And again, as an archaeologist, I say, okay, well, where exactly is the evidence for that?
The Lonely Nazca theory assumes, of course, that there were aliens to be signaled, and that's a big assumption.
There's an old rule in science, it's called Occam's razor, and essentially what it's about is it says, look, when you have multiple possible explanations for something, go with the one that requires the fewest other assumptions, that's probably the one to stick with until direct physical evidence that that's wrong and something else is right. Until that comes along, go with the simplest.
And there are plenty of simpler explanations out there. Joe Nichols' explanation brings us back to the gods.
The gravel has been cleared to the bare dirt, and they would work as processional figures, labyrinths, if you will. There's even some unnecessary, sometimes winding about in the figures, perhaps to gather the images, the power from the image.
Many Nazca line drawings have one element in common: lines extending outside the actual design. Like these, almost forming an entrance leading into the body of the hummingbird. Nichols' conclusion is that the people who built these lines traversed them as part of a sacred devotion.
Whatever else the Nazca lines were, they were ceremonial walking paths. I feel sure about that.
But there's still the question of the Star Child. Could this 900-year-old skull be proof that hundreds or thousands of years ago, humans bred with aliens? In San Francisco, Jason Eshelman